Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this one, after 4 days, which is the longest I've gone for like 3 weeks without an upload, after that time, we are taking a look at quite a legendary energy fighter right here. Looking at the first iteration of the LA planes that has like a radial engine. So, you know, after the summer event, I'm sure we'll check out the LAGG planes because I do like to fly those too, and they are kind of similar to the La-5 as far as how they handle and energy retention and how I play them. It's just that their armament's different, and they do have an inline engine instead of a radial like the La-5 does here. So if you compare this to something like a yak, you don't turn as aggressively, and you don't really climb as aggressively. It's still a very, very fast climber. I mean, I guess I say that about every plane. It has a fairly decent climb rate, and I feel like it does a little bit better at high altitudes compared to the yaks, but that does come with a caveat, and that's the fact that you can't use WEP above, well, for this plane, it is 3,800 meters, but for the different LA-5s, it varies a little bit. And for the LA-7, not the B-20 variant, but the normal LA-7, it cuts out at 3,800 meters as well. So that's just something to think about. You won't be able to use WEP above that, but it is still a fairly decent performer around 5,000 to 5,500 meters, which at 3.0, you're really not going to be above that very often. And most of the battles take place below 4,000 meters, or, well, most of the dogfights, I should say, take place below 4,000 meters. And 3,500 meters to 3,800 meters is a really, really great place to have this plane. The recommended, according to the stat card, we all know how that is at this point. It's like 6,100 or 6,200 meters that this plane can hit its top speed of 550-ish kilometers per hour. But like I said, the 3,500 to 3,800 is really a sweet spot for this plane, just because you still get to use the WEP and make honestly quite a lot of horsepower for 3.0, which is where this plane sits. And it's rank 2 of the tech tree, which is a little bit unfortunate. If you happen to get a talisman, it's really good for researching up to rank 3, which is what I have done for it. I got a talisman through a little loot crate or something like that, and it's been pretty nice. So I've used this quite a bit, and the P39K. If you guys remember the video on the P39K, I think that's the only time I've flown it. But getting back to the LA-5, it is sitting at 3.0, and you're going to have a pretty good mix of skill levels between players. You're going to have the really new guys that are just getting into War Thunder still and learning what to do. And then you're going to have guys like MZIH and myself, for example, who are higher level and just enjoy to play 3.0 because the planes are honestly super fun. I'm not trying to toot my own horn there or anything. saying that I'm a super high level or experienced, but that was just to get the wide range of skill levels across. So some of these kills that you guys are watching right now are mostly people. Well, this P-38, what you just saw is I sniped his wingtip off, but there are a couple where either people are AFK or just not paying attention on their phones because the climb is pretty slow at these BRs. So a couple of them are just people not paying attention, and you can boom and zoom with it like pretty much every other plane, but where it really shines is energy fighting, honestly. It doesn't have the strongest of flaps, but in a dogfight, it can hold its own against most planes. Besides, if you come across a bad Spitfire player, you're going to be able to take them on, but really, anyone that's flying the Spitfire, like Mark 2B, for example, if they can do an assessment of your energy state, just even kind of guesstimating, and they get the upper hand, then it's probably going to be over, especially if they're trying to conserve their energy in a turn fight, because they do turn better than you, and so do all of the Japanese planes, which is not a surprise to anybody. Now, as far as top speed with the La-5 goes, in level flight, it is about 550 kilometers an hour, which is fairly decent for 3.0, but in a dive and a shallow dive, it can easily hit 650 without ripping its wings, but you do run into a lot of compression. So something else that is a really good example of how to fly this plane is if you are coming down from pretty high altitude, it's fine to do a vertical dive, but, you know, oh my gosh, I need to like breathe for a second, guys. I have no idea what's going on with me. Anyways, just make sure that you're going to start pulling out of your dive at like 1,500 meters to 2,000 meters, just because the compression is very, very bad at higher speeds. I mean, your control surfaces pretty much lock up. So if you don't respect the compression of this plane, it is going to send you into the ground and you will turn into a fireball. But it really just depends on the situation, and most of the time you're just energy fighting with it, or at least you should be. And that was another great snipe. So front armament is two 20mm ShVAKs with 350 rounds of ammunition. And honestly, I'm really, really starting to like the ShVAKs. I hope I'm not absolutely butchering that right now, but as long as you're pretty conservative with your ammo and just like clicking, sending out some tracers, and watching and seeing where they go, as long as you're aiming like that, kind of like what I did in the 109 F4 video, like I talked about, you're not really going to have a problem with just blowing through your ammunition. And the ShVAKs can really, they can take care of anything from a 0 all the way up to an HE-111. So that does make them pretty potent. And, you know, I just want to say that getting kills with this plane is very rewarding. So to pull a, yeah, don't mind the chat there. A little hyping myself up. But you have to work to reverse somebody. It's not, it is doable. It's just that you have to put in the effort to bleed some energy, pop out your flaps. Sometimes You can pop out your landing flaps, but it's not always necessary. But, you know, it always just depends on the situation. So MZIH is actually contributing with some clips here. This one was a pretty quick double kill. He got that P38, and he's just going to dive right in on that P39. And I died, like, as soon as other planes got into this game. So he's bested me in this one. But as I was watching the clips that he sent me, I was just realizing how similarly, oh my gosh, I just butchered that. We fly this plane, so we're both just trying to conserve energy the best we can, and if you need to bleed energy, it's really not that hard to get it back if you do like a shallow dive. And the La-5 is very fast, I feel like, compared to most things. So after I edited everything up with his clips, I actually had a clip to contribute that we were in the same game together, but it had no audio, so decided to go back in, and I actually had a 7-kill game with this plane. I was quite impressed. So right here, just diving in on this P40, and I mean, the La-5, it really does gain quite a lot of speed very quickly, and right around 570, 600, you start to compress pretty bad. But that P40 messed up and tried to go for a head-on with that P63 and just kind of went right into my guns. So right here, P40 tried to go head-on with my teammate, and I just waited for him to get past me a little bit, and then I turned into him. That's one way that I kind of like to guarantee that I'll be able to get on somebody's 6, is let them get past me before I turn into them. So you're gonna see it pretty well here. Well, maybe not the best, but as I was going down, I started to turn really tight, and as I gained more speed and that compression kicked in, I really just kind of lost a little bit of my turning ability right there. So that's kind of one of those situations where you need to be a little careful of your compression. But teammate put that F4U into a flat spin, and that P40 is coming in for a head-on with this P63 for some reason. I don't know why people like to head-on in 3.0, but it happens all the time. So he went above me, and I went down. That P39 was above me just a few seconds ago, and he probably compressed into the ground right there, as you saw. But I'm going to pursue this P40 a little bit here. And you guys know me, I can't aim. But while I'm thinking about it, if you guys are trying to hit a lot of shots while zoomed in, you have to remember that you are losing quite a bit of your spatial awareness. So most of the time I like to stay zoomed out just so that I can get a better idea of where the enemy is going and where they are. Makes it a little bit easier to keep them in my sights. So this next clip, I kind of feel bad for doing it to this poor guy. I really just wanted to see how he was going to react and what he was going to do. So he's in a P38E, and if I remember, this one's at 3.0, I think. But for some reason, this guy, I'm assuming that he tried to reverse me. I don't really know what happened there, but he dove down and all of his energy is gone, and I proceed to just follow him around in circles for like a minute. But he doesn't use his flaps or really anything. I think he's just straight up using engine power, but I popped out my landing flaps, and as you can see, with the landing flaps out, it in a stall, which I would not recommend doing that a lot, especially if there are other enemies around, because they will just clap you out of the sky. That's just how it is, but it does turn fairly well. So it does, I believe, have a lower stall speed than that P-38, which is good on me. But I end up following him around and just shoot right into his cockpit there at the end. I really just wanted to see if I could get him to fly into the ground, but he, of course, did not. So I'm using a mix of flaps and my throttle right here just to stay on his 6. But, I mean, as you can see, there was nothing he could do. If you ever are in a P-38 and get yourself into this situation, it would be better to go for a head-on and then use your superior speed and power to put some distance between yourself. And if you want to see a little more of that, watch the P-38 video that I put out a while back. But we're in these are the last two guys right here. So I dove in on this F4U-1D, and there's just absolutely nothing that he could have done there. So props to you, guy. To you, guy. I don't know, but props to you, man. And chicken, I told you you would be in this video, so here you are. This is the new B7A2 Home R23, and honestly, it still can hold its own, but I did end up besting him here. He just about shot me with his rear gunner, but managed to avoid it. So it also kind of helps that I did recently get some time flying that, so it's still fresh in my brain. But he's going to pitch up for me, fire some shots off, and if I'm in a higher energy state and someone is below me and I see them pitching up, I'm going to go to the left or the right of their guns. I'm not going to go up as well. And while they are closer to stall speeds, I'm going to just make a turn and get right back on him. So I got a crit right there. I'm going to go down. He's going up. And the B7A2 is not something to take lightly. It is still a pretty good performing plane, even though it is technically a strike aircraft. But you guys know how I be sometimes. I get random clutches like this. But that's the end of the video, guys. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.